Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and everything in between. Welcome back to Old Man Rambles. I was thinking about my work history the other day. I've been working since I was 12. Literally, my first job, real job, was when I was 12 years old. Um, my first job was working as a busboy uh, in a restaurant that my older sister was the supervisor at. My mother would drive me to work in the morning because I worked at Breakfast Rush. This place called uh, Bartley's Ice Cream Parlor in Booth Bay Harbor, Maine. Uh, the only time it served food was breakfast. The rest of the time it was just ice cream. Worked there for most of the summer. I was paid $1.80 an hour. I made around 35 bucks a week after taxes, plus tips. It was my first job. I worked at the Anchor Inn in Round Pond, Maine for one summer. One summer I worked at an oyster farm. That was not a good job. And then my sophomore year in high school, my mother opened a sub shop, and I worked there until I moved to Portland, Maine. Then I worked at Carver's Restaurant for about a year and a half. I worked at Alberta's Cafe. I managed a Little Caesars Pizza. I took that job just so I could get the word manager in my resume. But worked in restaurants for the first 10 years of my working career, starting when I was 12. I eventually left because I really, really did not like my manager at the last place I worked in a restaurant. He was an idiot. He really, really was. He had no idea what he was doing. His brother had given him the job. He'd been a trucker his whole life. He had no idea how to run a restaurant. So him and I butted heads until I finally just walked. It's the only job I ever walked on. I literally just walked out. Only job I've ever done that on. But then since then, like I needed money. My wife and I we were engaged at the time. I was getting married in a few months. I needed a paycheck. So I got a job working as a screen printer, printing shirts for the tourist traps. The pay was better than I was making twice what I made working at a restaurant. And I worked Monday to Friday. So I saw the same hours as my wife. She was an office worker. So I worked warehouses. I worked there. I worked for Delorme Mapping. And then I've held my current position. Well, I've worked at my current company for almost 2.5 decades. So most of my working career has been for my current employer, and worked in the warehouse there for 10 years, and then I got promoted to an office position. Decided to take an office job before I got too old to be lugging boxes around the warehouse, and considering my my aches and my joints and pains, good idea for me to get out when I did. Although I'd probably be thinner if I was still working in the warehouse. But in all that time, what really came across my mind, what I really thought about, was that I haven't enjoyed my job for almost 30 years. Probably more than 30 years. It's been a very, very long time since I enjoyed my job. And that may seem an odd thing to say to people. People are like, it's a job. Nobody likes their job. Nobody has fun at their job. But my first decade of working in restaurants, I had fun working. Not every day. I mean, it's a hard job. It's a high stress job. People want their food. They're unhappy if it doesn't come out fast enough. They come out, they're angry when there's a mistake on it. Customers are frequently very impatient for their food, and I've had food thrown at me working in restaurants by people who were major assholes. You gotta smile and be happy about it. So working in restaurants was not always a pleasure. But by and large, there were days when I was happy to go to work. There were days I enjoyed my job. I enjoyed being at my job. I enjoyed my work. And that's what really struck me, is that I have not, I've had, I've, joked and laughed with my coworkers in my jobs. But yeah, I haven't really had fun at my job. Really, really enjoyed my job um, in over 30 years. And again, most people would be like, well, why would you ever think that? And it's because my first 10 years of working, I did enjoy my job. And I have, the last several days, been thinking about that. And I know some of it's a frame of mind. I've been doing this job for a long time. So yeah, you know, the newness has worn off. The new job smell has kind of worn off. I'm not in that new job space anymore where it's exciting and I'm learning things. I still occasionally learn things, but it's become routine, which is fine. I'm not going to quit my job, and I have lots of benefits. I have lots of vacation time. I have a good job and a good paycheck. So I'm not leaving it. But at the same time, if I had to choose a job, if I could get a job with the same benefits and paycheck, I'd go back to making sandwiches if I could. Because I miss having a job that I enjoyed. And I know it seems silly, especially for a lot of people who have never had that experience. But when you work at a place where you actually enjoy being there, it makes all the difference. Good hunting.